So this week we're doing a bit of a revisit of a topic. I don't usually like to revisit topics we have gone over before, but this is in regards to a comment someone made earlier in a video where we were talking about consciousness, and they said it was the ability to process morality. I found that interesting, so today we're going to look at it again with some new angles. Great idea. Demon can have the day off.
Fuck you.
Well, here we are again with a bunch of people that think God gives us objective morality. I mean, I can shut that argument down with one simple point. Is God an object or a subject? Christians believe God is a subject. They worship Him. They think He interacts with them and speaks to them. So clearly they think God is a subject. Therefore, even if God gave us our morals, they would be subject to God's wants, unless God gives us morals because the morals are good. But then God wouldn't be all powerful, since the morality would be higher than God, and a Christian wouldn't want to say that. Anyway, Angel says we have a short video we can talk about. So where do we want to get started?
Can you be good without God? Let's find out.
I mean, I already know we can be good without God. Not a problem. True, so let's keep going then.
Absolutely astounding. There you have it. Undeniable proof that you can be good without believing in God.
Hey, that was Taipan's grandson. But I have a feeling the narrator is setting something up.
But wait, the question isn't, can you be good without believing in God? The question is, can you be good without God?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes.
See, here's the problem. If there is no God, what basis remains for objective good or bad, right or wrong?
Yes. Oh, we're on to the next clip. It's all good, Angel. I forgive you. Okay, sounds good. Well, yeah, what basis indeed would instill objectivity to an opinion-based personal ideal, things such as morality? For there to be an objective good or bad, right or wrong, there must be something, not someone, but something that substantiates that good or right is to always be good or right, and that bad or wrong to always be bad or wrong. Is there anything that is one or the other, or does it depend on a person's perspective? There's still a lot of video left, so let's continue. Angel, you're up.
If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. And here's why. Without some objective reference point, we have no way of saying that something is really up or down.
Up and down are subjective on a galactic scale, sure, but on a planetary scale, we define up and down as pointing to or away from the planet's gravitational center point. So where myself and a person in Australia, say, will be pointing in two different directions from a galactic point of view, we are both objectively pointing to the gravitational center of the planet. This is again speaking of objects, but either way, this is a category error since we're talking about objects and conceptuality. God is not a thing like a space station or a planet or a spacesuit.
God's nature provides an objective reference point for moral values. It's the standard against which all actions and decisions are measured.
God's nature. Oh boy. So it's not God that gives us objective morality, it's the nature of God. So, where does God get that nature? Is it just a fact of gods or something? That's a good point, Angel. You should speak more often. Well, yes, I know you're mute, but I mean this text. I like it. Perfect. So, Angel brought up a good point. If it's God's nature, then that nature had to exist outside of God, and God is subject to the nature of himself? Exactly. It doesn't. If God is the all-powerful being he's supposed to be, then his nature comes from himself, making the nature of God subjective to God. And if that is the standard, morality is then based on the opinion of God. And that starts to make more sense if God exists.
But if there's no God, there's no objective reference point. All we're left with is one person's viewpoint, which is no more valid than anyone else's viewpoint.
Hold on, you said one person's viewpoint, but you are appealing to one deity's viewpoint. Yes, and he just said that one person's viewpoint is no more valid than another person's. And since a person is an entity, he is just saying that God's viewpoint is no more valid than anyone else's. I mean, I get what he's trying to do, but this really isn't the best way to do it at all. Unless he is going to show that God's morality is concrete and unchanging and, well, we'll have a bit more we can say on that, but let's let him continue for now.
This kind of morality is subjective, not objective.
Exactly.
It's like a preference for strawberry ice cream. The preference is in the subject, not the object. So it doesn't apply to other people. In the same way, subjective morality applies only to the subject. It's not valid or binding for anyone else. So, in a world without God, there can be no evil and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference.
For a moment there, I thought he was going to say we do have morals that are subjective, but yes, there is no concrete good or concrete evil, just like there is no concrete right and wrong. If there were, there would be no need for conflict or wars, because morality would forbid us from seeking aggressive conflict. Since wars do happen and happen frequently enough, there must be some morals that are subjective, and thus good and evil, right and wrong, are then subjective to the two sides of the war or conflict. But let's get to dishonesty. I would think that being dishonest would be wrong, an immoral act. Angel, let's give his quote there a little more context. The total amount of suffering per year in the natural world is beyond all decent contemplation. During the minute that it takes me to compose this sentence, thousands of animals are being eaten alive. Many others are running for their lives, whimpering with fear. Others are slowly being devoured from within by rasping parasites. Thousands of all kinds are dying of starvation, thirst, and disease. It must be so. If there ever is a time of plenty, this very fact will automatically lead to an increase in the population until the natural state of starvation and misery is restored. In a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we would expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. Makes a whole lot more sense when you take into consideration the entire quote, doesn't it? What Richard was talking about was the indifference of nature to keep trucking right along, and not that we as individuals would see something as right or wrong. There is pitiless indifference in nature, not in a person or animal. Next, we have a long section, but Angel and I want to break this up into two parts. Yes, please.
God has expressed his moral nature to us as commands. These provide the basis for moral duties. For example, God's essential attribute of love is expressed in his command to love your neighbor as yourself.
Loving your neighbor as yourself. Every faith in the world has this as a tenet. It's claimed by history's endless parade of gods. But if love is the striking moral tenet and God is the one that gives it to us, how does one explain the violence in the Old Testament? The flood of Noah, the conquest of Joshua, the battle of Siddim, the Golden Calf Massacre, the battle of Mount Tabor, and I could go on and on and on. Where was the love in any of those? Seems that even God's love is subjective to certain people. But let's continue.
This command provides a foundation upon which we can affirm the objective goodness of generosity, self-sacrifice, and equality. And we can condemn as objectively evil greed, abuse, and discrimination. This raises a problem. Is something good just because God wills it, or does God will something because it is good?
Interesting. This could actually have been 3 parts. Oh boy, I can't wait. So, evil is greed. Joshua killed the Canaanites to take their land. Evil is abuse. Instead of helping the Israelites understand that worshiping the calf was wrong, he had a bunch of them slaughtered. Evil is discrimination. How many times in the Bible does it speak of God's chosen? That is definitionally discrimination. God speaks to be good, but performs what this guy is saying is objectively evil. So, if God is willing all of this, I don't think God is granting anything good or evil. Just what suits him and his chosen worshippers. I highly doubt any of the people God had killed or killed himself were thinking that, oh, this is a loving act. I love you. Take this sword to the throat. Okay, I'm just frustrated with the hypocrisy.
This raises a problem. Is something good just because God wills it, or does God will something because it is good? The answer is neither one. Rather, God wills something because he is good.
Does he realize what he just did was to show that good is subjective to God? Yeah, because what he just said was that it is good because God wills it. The issue is a true dichotomy, and you can't just say neither. There is no middle ground, because the question in essence is if God is dependent on what is good, or is good dependent on what God wills. So saying God is good means that good is dependent on God. And without God, there would be no good, meaning God's will of good and evil is subjective to God. And if it's subjective to a being, then it can be subjective to any being. And you don't need God to have morality or good or evil.
God is the standard of moral values, just as a live musical performance is the standard for a high-fidelity recording.
Without your love.
The more a recording sounds like the original, the better it is. Likewise, the more closely a moral action conforms to God's nature, the better it is. But if atheism is true, there is no ultimate standard. So there can be no moral obligations or duties. Who or what lays such duties upon us?
First of all, that recording reminds me of God's morality. It's shit, just like his discriminatory standards. So, who lays morality on humanity? Nature. As I have said with other videos, morality is a byproduct of evolutionary selection. Like, we as humans are a highly social species. We evolved to work together to achieve a greater goal. We cooperate like a pack might and defend ourselves like a pack. You will see some serious pack mentality when we go to war to defend ourselves. I live in the United States and was alive for the 9/11 attacks. If you wanted to see pack mentality, we as a nation stood together to help those in New York and Washington. Then we as a pack went out and fucked some shit up to bring to justice those who lost their lives. But here's the crux. Did the attackers on 9/11 think what they were doing was evil or immoral? Angel's right. They thought that they were destroying evil, and we were the evil. Now, think about it from Joshua and the Canaanites' perspective. Did the citizens of Jericho think Joshua and the Israelites were acting morally and good when they were killing them all? That's right, Angel. You know I'm enjoying this interaction.
Choke on a sandpaper cock.
Demon, you have today off. It's Angel's turn.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Angel, what's his favorite dinner? Honestly, I thought it would be jambalaya. Yes, please.
For the atheist, humans are just accidents of nature, highly evolved animals. But animals have no moral obligations to one another. When a cat kills a mouse, it hasn't done anything morally wrong. The cat's just being a cat. If God doesn't exist, we should view human behavior in the same way. No action should be considered morally right or wrong.
Where it's true we are just a sort of accident of nature, what he does next is a complete category error and highly fallacious. He is equating a cat killing a mouse to a human killing a human child. What he should be doing is equating a cat killing a mouse to a human killing, say, a deer. The cat is killing the mouse for food. It's hunting. There is nothing immoral or about hunting for your food. A human killing a deer to bring home for food, it's not an immoral act. Yeah, but we did the vegan show a few months ago and explained how going vegan is an affront to God, since from their perspective, our bodies being made to digest meat, and not doing so would mean that the vegan thinks they have a higher moral standard than God, and God is supposed to be their ultimate moral standard. So it's just an entire rabbit hole to go down. Right. The cat is hunting, and the human is also hunting. But within a pride, lions don't normally kill each other, nor do humans normally. Now, in both species, there are going to be exceptions to that rule, but the pride and our society do not approve of such action. Lions and other cats are rejected by pride, and humans are put in jail, or the death penalty. This is because, while our morality is subjective, we still agree on the social impact of the cooperative species and have laws that govern that share that subjective morality of the vast majority.
But the problem is, good and bad, right and wrong, do exist. Just as our sense experience convinces us that the physical world is objectively real, our moral experience convinces us that moral values are objectively real. Every time you say, "Hey, that's not fair, that's wrong, that's an injustice," you affirm your belief in the existence of objective morals.
Good and evil, right and wrong, do in fact exist. But my good and evil will differ from someone else's. My right and wrong will also differ from someone else's. And what I think is an injustice is a necessary action for someone else. I love how the guy that stole the phone was intentionally dressed up to be like a stereotypical robber, but the starving family that steals an apple to live isn't doing it to commit an evil. They are doing it for a good reason. So, what if that thief in the animation is from a starving family and he intends to sell it so his children don't starve to death? Is it now a good act for feeding his family, an evil act for stealing the phone, or is it a gray area somewhere in between? Exactly, Angel is right. And as long as there exists morally gray areas, then it can't be objectively black and white. So when I give my opinion that something is wrong, I am merely stating my own personal subjective morals.
We're well aware that child abuse, racial discrimination, and terrorism are wrong for everybody, always. Is this just a personal preference or opinion?
It's our collective opinion. But let's ask the child abuser if they think what they're doing is wrong. Let's ask the security guard that profiles someone based on race and outward appearance if they are doing wrong. Let's ask the terrorist if they think what they're doing is wrong. All three will say no, even though the vast majority of people will all think they are doing wrong or evil, myself included. But the main issue here, I want to point out, is how these people argue objective morality while only applying it to the most extreme cases. If morality is objective, all morals would be objective, right? So why appeal to the extremes? Simple. Because if they appealed to the little things, their argument falls entirely apart every time. I'm going to skip ahead a little as he brings up a subject so disgusting it has no place on our channel. You're welcome.
If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists.
First of all, everything in there was incorrect. Literally everything. The first premise is wrong because it assumes that only God can provide objective morality. Nature could do it without God, but doesn't because nature is indifferent when it comes to morality from one to the other. Just because a thing is one way does not mean it could never potentially have been another way. Second premise is wrong right from the start. Objective morals do not exist, and we explained away all of his examples of objective morality. The details of morality is inherently opinion-based and emotionally charged, and the highly impacting ones like murder and rape are still opinion-based. Just because the vast majority of people think something is immoral does not mean it's an objective moral right or wrong. His conclusion is therefore wrong, but even that doesn't prove God does not exist. Everything about his statements are just completely garbage. Personally, I think Christians tend to use the moral argument because no one wants to say that murder is a good act. So the Christian will then say, aha, objective morality, woohoo, checkmate atheist. Well, we're playing checkers, not chess. When you are playing the correct game, then we'll talk. Sure, of course we can.
Atheism fails to provide a foundation for the moral reality every one of us experiences every day. In fact, the existence of objective morality points us directly to the existence of God.
Except we do have a perfectly good explanation for how we get our morals. Now, the issue I have is what your ideology instantiates. Why do you need a God to tell you not to kill other people? Why do you need a God to tell you not to abuse your child? Why do you need a God to tell you not to be a racist? Why do you need a God to tell you not to be a terrorist? Why do you need a God to tell you not to do all these atrocious things when I don't? I can make that choice for myself in my desire not to ruin someone else's life. You can't. You have to appeal to your God with a history of child abuse when he had Joshua kill the children of Jericho, racism when he brought Moses to the promised land, treating those that weren't Israelites as lesser, terrorism when he had his people assault cities of innocent people just because he disagreed with them, and murder in countless places in the Bible with all the wars he had ordered. Personally, I just have a higher moral standard than that. Everyone expects me to do it. You know what? You go ahead.